Good morning, Michael.
Hello.
Now we should be able to maintain that quorum when Brittany jumps off early. Nope, no pressure, Brittany. Oh, shoot, she's gone.
Already.
It's not 8 o'clock yet. I'm sorry, Therese, did you say we're ready to go?
Yes.
All right, well, good morning, everybody. Welcome to a beautiful Wednesday morning. It is Wednesday, isn't it? I believe so. June 2nd for the West Salem Redevelopment Advisory Board. Why don't we start off with a quick roll call if we could, Therese?
Okay, Jeff Miller,
Here.
Brandon Folman,
Here.
Kathy Goss, not present. John Hannum,
Present.
Kylie Jackson, not present. Mark May,
Here.
Samantha Ross,
Here.
Brittany Davidson,
Here.
Michael Rand,
Here.
not Michael Rand.
Here.
Okay, thank you. And Sean Enwam, not present.
Thank you, Therese. With that, I'm sure everyone's looked over the agenda. Anybody have any additions or deletions that they would like to discuss or add? Or if not, a motion to approve would be wonderful.
So moved.
Second. Second by John. Any discussion? Doubtful, all in favor, please raise a hand, say aye. Any opposed, raise a hand, say aye. John, that was an awesome pinky, by the way. I saw that pinky raise. We were drinking tea and eating crumpets this morning, so.
Bring it on.
All right, moving on. I'm sure everyone has taken a minute to review the minutes from last meeting, and I'm assuming that that's true. So if so, I would entertain a motion to approve.
This is Brittany. I'll make a motion to approve the May minutes.
Thank you, Brittany.
Second.
Second by Michael. Thank you, Michael. Any discussion? Likely not. All those in favor, please raise a hand or a pinky. Any opposed? Perfect. Motion passes. Very good. We'll just skip right past action item number 4 because we don't have one, and we will move right into our guest speaker, which is Gretchen from the city, Gretchen Bennett, who's going to talk a little bit about homelessness and what's going on and the city's efforts to address that. So with that, Gretchen, please, and I apologize, Gretchen, I didn't have your title. So if you wouldn't mind, I apologize.
Oh, no worries. My favorite title, especially for this group, is West Salem resident. It's fun to be a part of coming to a meeting West because I'm a West Salem family. But my title technically is both liaison on homelessness issues and human rights and federal compliance manager. And I'm on the staff team at the mayor and the city manager's office. And it's nice to see everybody. What I thought I'd do is kind of hit the highlight reel of some key things we're working on, but then be really open to your questions and any particular threads that you're interested in discussing further, if that sounds okay. Great. Well, generally speaking, as you know, I don't need to tell you, this is a heck of a challenge. We think that there's probably a roughly 1,500 people or so that are outside. About half of those are chronically or experiencing homelessness. About half of those are chronically experiencing homelessness, which means for an extended period of time. It looks like, generally speaking, our shelter bed indoor count is somewhere around 300 to 350. And then we have about another 120 safe vehicle parking spaces. But it leads us to roughly having around 1,000 people right now who are out there in the parks or on the sidewalks or on the streets. And so it creates a significant challenges, of course, you understand, both in recognizing and working with people to try to find more appropriate solutions and pathways to self-sufficiency, and also the balancing or the management of the public spaces, and how do you make it work with sidewalks and parks and all of that, since none of those spaces were designed for living. So it's a significant challenge. In the past year, we've been taking a look we took a look at the pandemic when the pandemic numbers hit a year ago, March, and we're immediately concerned about having physical space for people to be, because the shelters had to reduce capacity to meet the COVID restrictions. And we had already been really concerned about the people packed in on the sidewalks downtown and all of the challenges that that created, both for them and for the downtown business owners and customers and everybody. So we opened, as you know, 2 areas in 2 parks with the thinking that what people could have is campsites that are physically distant from one another. So we could create more space so that you would see less being packed in and hopefully transmit the virus less. And from that standpoint, it looks like that was pretty successful, generally speaking. However, we've seen growth in the numbers of people at the parks, and we've seen real challenges to what's happening at the parks. We've seen increases in conflict and area impacts in the surrounding areas. We've also seen an impact to the waterways and the streams, and we have some now environmental compliance issues we need to deal with that relate to the parks. So City Council concluded that that's not sustainable long-term. I mean, parks are not meant to be places of long-term habitation. And so let's see, today's June 2nd. Yesterday, the City Council allowed the parking ban or the camping ban to become reinstated. So technically, as of yesterday, it's no longer within the park rules to be sleeping overnight in a city park. That said, City Council was really concerned about the lack of alternative options and didn't want people to just have no solution. You know, really, we want to work with people to try to find solutions that make sense given their situation and be able to move that on. The council's also concerned about not sanctioning unmanaged activities, you know, essentially like unmanaged encampments, but rather are interested in when we can make investments in appropriate resources and supports that help people. So wanted to take that transition away from an unmanaged thing, like just opening up land, and into expanding managed options. So we're focused in several areas right now. One of them is expanding managed alternative shelter options. We're bringing to City Council this month proposals that would open a couple of outdoor managed spaces where vehicles and then the small shelters could be. And we have a proposal for an indoor space. And then we have a proposal for purchasing a site that would coincide with a new investment the Oregon legislature just made. The Oregon legislature just invested in Salem with 2 years worth of operating dollars to operate a navigation center where people could go and be able to stay for a bit and navigate the service system and ideally move into a next step for them that would make sense. So we're needing to acquire a property that would allow those operating dollars to be put to use in a navigation center. So there's a number of managed options coming before City Council as options in June, and then for a funding vote June 28th. We're also studying how to expand crisis response. One of the things that's really hit me is the significance in behavioral health. I can't get over the stories and the situations when I talk with people who are talking to people, like when we go down in front of Rite Aid and try to figure out what's going on and how we can resolve those issues, just significant behavioral health issues. And so one of the things, we have several strategies along those lines, but one of them is expanding the crisis responsibility to be able to send people out to talk with people right away who are in some sort of mental health crisis. Another part of that is substance use. And there's also a strategy underway to try to identify a safe space where people can become sober if people are extremely intoxicated out on the streets or parks, and that's not workable for those kinds of public spaces. Having a place to be able to sober up safely that's not Salem Hospital, because that's expensive and that's not what they're designed to do. Then with people who are right there who'd have our best shot at helping them access detoxification or rehabilitation services. So a sobering space or sobering center is another strategy that we're working on. We also got some good news yesterday on a grant we applied for. There's a national strategy that is getting a lot of attention that we've just started here in Salem called supportive housing. Again, recognizing the number of people with very significant behavioral health issues and knowing that if they just went into housing, there'd be a high likelihood of eviction and just not meeting the expectations of the property management company. Some are needing almost like the old school group homes or a supportive housing environment with staff on site to be able to assist people in developing those life skills to be able to live indoors and in a location. We opened our first one on Fisher Road during the pandemic and already have a 2-year wait list. And so we're at work to open additional ones and just got some good news yesterday about a grant that would eventually lead to 100 more of those units. And that's the kind of strategy that appears to meet the need of many who are outside right now. So we're excited about that. We also continue to make investments in the housing rental assistance program for those who can be able to be successful in a housing unit where we identify people with significant barriers and work with them to secure affordable housing and then provide some case management to ensure that's stable and just try to connect people. Another strategy is just increasing the types of affordable housing units that are available in Salem. And on that, I'd highlight a recent decision about some property on Market Street. The city is looking at a couple of parcels that it owns as potential to be places for the tiny homes or cottage clusters to be placed. There's a strategy housing committee that's being led by the United Way of the Mid-Willamette Valley that's at work to identify parcels and develop these little units. And then they could be small, affordable units. And that's targeting people who are up in years, retirement age, very fixed incomes, but just aren't finding units in the market or housing in the market that matches their living conditions. Maybe they owned a home, but the property taxes have priced them out or just are unable to find a rental unit. So that's the target for those folks. We see a lot of those types of people right now in our Safe Park program and in our parks. So that'll be exciting to watch that program expand. But as you can see, there's a lot of threads to it. Affordable housing, poverty, having safe places for people to be so that they can get to jobs, so that they can get to services, finding ways to enforce the challenging behaviors that we're seeing in public spaces is another real challenge of it. Many of the behaviors that we see on the sidewalks or in the parks that are of concern to the community aren't lodgeable in our county jails necessarily. And so finding ways to reduce the barriers or reduce the behaviors and encourage people to make different choices while having a lack of enforcement tools can be a real challenge, but that's part of the overall picture as well. I might pause there. I kind of threw out a lot of information and just see if any of that engages any of you in a question, or if you have anything you'd like to hear more about, or any advice or feedback for me. I'm really all ears. It's a very interesting subject and I'm trying to learn all I can about how to address it.
Samantha, please.
So I think that is really great information. What is timeline, for example, cities looking at 2 parcels on Market Street for the affordable fixed income elderly? I think that's amazing. Is this just something that started, or what's the timeline on actually making that happen?
That's a good question. I'm trying to remember. The decision went before council for the use of the property. The United Way has been working on securing the dollars to place the parcels on to acquire the units, but I don't know where they are in their fundraising campaign to secure those. I have to say I can't remember. Samantha, I'd be happy to try to find that out though, and I could get that information to Therese and Tori. But I don't remember. I know they're on a fast track. I'm impressed that they identify a project and let's see how quickly we can make progress on it. So I know they're working on it as soon as possible basis. We wrote some letters of support recently for potential congressional funding for the project.
Brandon.
Thank you.
Hey, Gretchen, those houses that they're planning on putting on those Market Street parcels, are they kind of those temporary looking structures, those little single room things, or is it a more permanent style of housing?
They're a step up from what you might see on Portland Road. The city purchased pallet shelters from the company called Pallet, which places units that they're like $4,000 to $5,000 a piece, and they do have, you know, lockable doors, which is very attractive for people who are trying to leave and work or access appointments and need their stuff to be safe. But then there's a level up that's still affordable and small, and that's where United Way is dwelling. It's a bit of a step up because the idea is more permanent living in those. And the little shelters that we've been doing are ideally more of a temporary experience.
Brittany, you got a question?
Yeah. Oh, yes, I do have a question, Gretchen, regarding the numbers that you found living in the community. Was that more than what you guys were anticipating, less? And is that pretty common for a city our size, or do we have more homeless residents than others? Do you know that?
I can tell you, I know some of what you're asking. We have more people who are quote unquote chronic homeless. We have a higher rate in the state of Oregon and a higher rate in the country for that. Oregon's ranked 50th in mental health. And I wonder about the lack of behavioral health resources driving the chronic number as being an issue. I am really curious to see when our data comes out that we can compare over last year. We haven't yet gotten the data for this year's count. And so I'm curious to see if it's grown. We just did a count last week of number of tents in Wallace and Cascades, and it came out a bit higher than we had predicted. We thought we counted or estimated a total of 571 persons in the two parks as of about a week and a half ago. And so that was pretty significant for us. Generally, there's speculation that the problem has increased over the past year. We are getting reports of COVID-related issues where people were in service industry and lost their jobs early, and then despite the eviction moratorium, did get an eviction and ended up outdoors. We're hearing reports and seeing reports of that kind of situation despite the investments to try to respond to that. We have also seen some people who've come here who had been impacted from the wildfires, but there are strategies underway to try to address that, but yet that's been part of the increase. Sometimes people cite the passage of Measure 110 and substance use laws in Oregon as being a related factor, but most of all, the research talks about not having the types of housing units and the types of resources that match the needs of the population. Like having housing units that fit the budgets of people who are here is a significant driver in the number of people who are homeless in a community. The research continues to bear that out, as well as the types of services. If you're in need of more of a mental health group home type of approach, or some sort of inpatient services, we're needing much more in that area and not having that. So those seem to be primary drivers. We're really trying to get better and more data. That's something we're fascinated by. The Community Action Agency has been doing a great job with a coordinated entry data system where people are assessed, and kind of put on wait lists for housing. And so we get some data coming out of those assessment processes that can help. It identifies needs and challenges that people have.
Gretchen, I have a couple of questions unless someone else does. Samantha, Brittany, no one else has any questions. I had a couple of questions for you real quick. You had mentioned the city's looking to acquire a property. I think there's been some recent news about some nonprofits acquiring hotels and things of that nature for transitional housing or some sort of assisted housing and stuff. When you say that the city is looking to acquire, is it the similar type program? Is the city looking to acquire a hotel motel type property? Is that what you're referring to?
Thanks for asking, Jeff. No, on the case of acquiring the property, we're trying to acquire a building that would be appropriate to run a navigation center, which is a type of a shelter. So we're going to be bringing a proposal to City Council this month that would acquire a building, a property that could run an indoor shelter. And that'll take advantage of the operating dollars that the Oregon legislature has invested. If we've got the place, we've got dollars at least for a few years to be able to operate that. However, the city's being invited to contribute toward the project with the hotel. The Community Action Agency and the Center for Hope and Safety in our area both have been awarded project turnkey grants, which turn hotels into shelter spaces. And in the case of the Community Action Agency project, they are in the process of acquiring and closing on an 80-room hotel and are needing some funding to close the gap. And so the city is being asked to contribute towards that project, and that request will be before City Council as well. There'll be an initial priority to assist wildfire victims there, but when we do the math, it looks like there's going to be plenty of room for people who are experiencing homelessness in the Salem area as well. And there'd be a priority for chronic homelessness, which is one of our greatest needs. So that property and that strategy can make a big difference for Salem.
So thank you. But so going back to the properties for the shelter, is that something that's already owned by the city, or is it something the city is going to spend dollars in addition to the congressional dollars for the operating expenses?
Thank you. It looks like we're needing to put in dollars to acquire the property. We did a really thorough study of the city-owned buildings and city-owned parking lots and areas and couldn't find anything that would be workable for the project. And so this would involve the city acquiring a building. So we were currently in discussion on a property and are discussing making an offer that would be to buy a building.
Gotcha. Last question for me. You had mentioned that some of the homelessness, the chronic homeless, it's created an issue with streams, environmental issues. And is there any dollar associated with that cleanup? What that's going to cost the city to kind of reposition the parks when it's done, or the streams, the creeks, the rivers? Is there any indication of what kind of bill that's going to run the city in the end?
Yeah, it's a great question. Already it's been almost a weekly cost as we work on removing garbage and removing waste from the spaces on a regular basis. However, I'm trying to remember the dollar number. I don't remember the exact dollar number, but it's a few $100,000. I want to say roughly $350,000 has been earmarked for park restoration. So as we conclude camping at the 2 park spaces, we will be moving through and doing a deeper clean and soil restoration of the spaces to be sure to restore Wallace and Cascades. I don't know that I completed the thought earlier. I wanted to mention we're seeing a gradual strategy at the parks in recognition of needing alternative locations for people to be, and capacity resources. It's not practical or logical to immediately have 571 people leaving the parks, and where would everybody go and how would that even work? And especially when the offenses aren't jailable, it's like, what do? You don't want to criminalize the situation, of course. So the idea is to work section by section of the park. We've been working in Wallace the past couple of weeks, for example, and we worked by the fir trees by the Courthouse Athletic Club, and then worked over near the softball field parking lot, and we're going to be near the soccer field this week, just kind of working section by section, working with people to try to identify other places to be, and then cleaning any abandoned property or litter that's left. So we're taking it chunk by chunk.
I have a question, so there's a lot of nonprofits, organizations that talk about homelessness and solutions. I'm curious, do all of these different organizations, nonprofits, do you guys ever come together to maximize what do you guys all sit down and talk or have a meeting and see what everyone's doing?
Yeah, and I would demand that as a community member. I agree. With a big challenge and limited resources, it makes no sense to duplicate effort and every sense to really maximize what the resources are. Yeah, there's several tables where that happens on a very broad policy and funding strategy level. There's the Mid-Willamette Valley Homeless Alliance, which is made up of the cities and the counties in our region, and they're working to do that broad strategic planning, identify goals, and then they've also found very specific projects that have helped leverage dollars into our community. They recently secured a $5.5 million grant, which is going to fund 10 organizations in the region to do a variety of strategies, 7 of which will impact Salem. There's also very specific tables that take on projects. I've been particularly interested in the committee called Built for Zero. Built for Zero is the idea that we're going to build for zero homelessness in our area. And it's a number of key organizations with expertise and resources. And they identify about 15 or so of people who are really struggling, that are not succeeding with a typical street outreach contact and referral to services. And they talk through, they do by name case conferencing and talk through, here's what's happening with this person, here's what's falling through the cracks. Does anybody have a solution for this? Does anyone have a solution for that? And really try to work through finding solutions.
Thank you.
But there's actually a number of tables at kind of different parts of the system where people come together and coordinate. From what I can see, where we're falling short is there's just some really big gaps. The significant behavioral health is, I keep hammering on that, but that's just huge. We'll have people out there who are pretty catatonic or hearing voices or just very, very low life skills. Like a conversation can lead to a significant crisis and a huge trauma history behind that. And folks are just unable to participate or do well in a shelter environment or housing on their own or in a job space, and trying to assist people with those really significant barriers has been where I think we've had the hardest time.
Thank you.
Yeah.
It appears that we've lost a couple people, which means I don't believe we're in quorum. Therese, were you going to chime in on that?
Yeah, you're good as far as you can continue to discuss things. You just can't make any motions or anything.
Perfect.
So you can continue to listen.
Yep, perfect. I was thinking that we were going to do the same thing. I don't necessarily see anything that's we need to vote on moving forward in the agenda. Mark, did you, Brandon, John, Samantha, anything that you are feeling we need to vote on that would cause a problem?
I've got nothing.
I just wanted to see Brandon's pen really fast.
I see Brandon's pen.
Yeah, could you show us?
Oh, shoot. That's a great pen.
I like it.
John, were you going to jump in?
Oh, I just had a quick kind of follow up to kind of build on what Brittany was asking. And just to give a little bit of context, Gretchen, I live up in Portland. I'm on the board because I work for Goodwill. We have a site down in West Salem. And I would say across the board, our business has a critical issue with the homeless population and its interaction with our employees. I mean, you may recall we had an employee stabbed, on site last year, and we've just had a lot of issues, and those issues are continuing to get worse. So it's good to hear that the city is making some efforts. However, I'm still concerned that there isn't really any long-term solutions and a really good understanding of how to move the ball forward in a meaningful way. And I'm not trying to put that comment on you. Obviously, that's not your responsibility. It's the responsibility of a lot of people. And I'm just trying to better understand, do we really have a good grasp on what the issue is and how to actually create long-term meaningful solutions that are actually going to impact the homelessness issue? Or are we really just treating a lot of symptoms and not really understanding the core issues? So that's a great question. Sorry.
No, it's actually a great question. And where I fit in the scheme of things is I've been kind of focused much more myopically in the last year on trying to mitigate impacts on sidewalks and parks and find other shelter spots. So I've been kind of working in that response space. But stepping back, Everything we read and study from other cities and from the literature suggests there's a number of upfront solutions that are really important. You need to prevent homelessness by working at the affordable housing and at the problem solving issue right when people are experiencing things, improving savings, improving wages, improving job skills. There's that whole front end part of it. Preventing trauma and reducing trauma, because trauma history plays a significant role in that. So there's all those front end preventative strategies, and there's a number of organizations working there. And then there's the stock of services, and again, what's built in our environment in terms of housing options at various price points so that you have affordability across the wage spectrum. There's substance use treatment and mental health treatment available at the time people need it in the manner in which people need it that can make a difference in preventing or stopping homelessness. The supportive housing structure has a lot of promise and has had a lot of success in being part of the permanent solution. It's just for people who aren't succeeding on their own to have that kind of live-in staff support appears essential for a certain percentage of the population and can prevent homelessness. So there's a number of research-based strategies that are being worked on, some by the city and some by our regional collaboration that includes the city and the counties.
Okay.
I won't tell you we've got it figured out. There's interesting elements in the legal landscape and what's doable and not doable, and there's a lot to it for sure, but there are strategies underway at that prevention place as well.
So we've just in the past 5 to 7 years, we've really just as a state probably done a poor job of addressing housing, mental health, substance abuse, and trauma with these people essentially, because it's really, I think everyone can attest, it's significantly worse. I've lived in Oregon my whole life. This is the worst I've ever seen it.
Yeah, ditto. I wish I was better. I need to get the stats right in front of me because there's a statistic about how much we underbuilt affordable housing units in Oregon that's pretty dramatic, that would surprise you. And there's statistics about where we've defunded the inpatient mental health services that would surprise you. There's a number of drivers that I think describe where we're at. And in Salem recently, there had been quite a bit of camping on private property. I think for a while, Salem just didn't see it, because people were finding locations on private property that was fairly invisible. And then as those property owners made different decisions and disallowed camping in those areas, we started to immediately see in more public spaces the impacts. And so I think for a while, Salem just wasn't seeing it.
Thank you.
Gretchen, really quick on population growth. I know that it's hard to assess and have the data. I'd just be curious to see, you mentioned the drivers, it's one of those things, chicken and egg, the more resources as it get well known within that community that, hey, go to Salem because the resources are there. I'm just curious to see if, how things have changed over time. I know this has been an ongoing issue over at least the last 2 to 5 years. How much has that increased over that period?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'm also looking at seeing what we can learn about how the data changes over the time and do some analysis with what we're doing and how that relates. The last thing anybody wants to do is perpetuate pain or grow the issue or perpetuate the problem in any way. We did a general literature review, and it suggested that presence of services, they did some studies and said presence of services doesn't impact people arriving in places, but we've also heard anecdotally of challenges to that and examples of, I understand this is true in Oregon, or the climate's temperate and there's a lot of compassionate people, you can go there and receive help. So we've seen research that would debunk that. We've heard anecdotally of examples where people do arrive and come to access supports. There is something about being in a hub city that has an impact as well, and you see great work happening in our regional smaller communities to try to address issues in those communities to prevent coming into Salem, which is super helpful. But yeah, I don't know enough about that, Tori. It's something that seems to lack a lot of good local data. So that's one of the things I'm hoping to get out of our data system. Again, the general lit review says, no, the services don't drive those decisions. But again, anecdotally, we hear examples of maybe sometimes they do.
I just have one more thing. If nobody else is bringing something up, my wife works at the hospital at the ER, and so a lot of the homeless population gets sent there, to get temporary shelter, blankets, those things. And they hear, and I just wanted to see if any of this is true. This is probably one of those like anecdotal. They just hear that other communities, in Texas and other places, they don't want to see it there. They're a little more harsh. So they'll get them a bus ticket and they'll ship them out to, Oregon, where, we're a little more friendly to the population. I just want to, if that's not factual, I don't know if in your approach to information gathering as you place people, you're assessing where, their point of origin or where they're coming from, or if they're primarily Oregon based, and, kind of puts those rumors or to rest, I guess, if that information is out there.
Thank you. I too have heard those examples and received those questions. I should have data in front of me. We did ask that question of the folks that are doing the coordinated entry data system, and where people are from is a question on those questionnaires. And they reported a vast majority of people either being from the area or having left and then returning to the area because of family. Like they might come here and then something breaks down with their family. They had originally been here and left, and then they come back, as being the majority of the population here. We do have people who come from out of area, but it was the minority in looking at the numbers in the coordinated entry data system. We looked at numbers at Cascades Gateway Park, and they had a percentage that was unknown, that was too great to be able to draw any conclusions. But yeah, that's one of the areas that I feel like we need to understand better.
Thank you. Just curious.
So I'll just pop in. I had the opportunity to talk to Gretchen a couple of times over the last couple of weeks. She brought one of the community groups that was doing these temporary pallet homes into a conversation with us to see if there's anything with some of our excess property that we could do. And it was really enlightening. Ultimately, it's not going to work for us. But I had, again, a couple of conversations with Gretchen and others. And what I learned, I don't know really much at all about this issue. But what I did learn, it was very obvious. And so, John, to some of your points, I think Gretchen did a great job of responding. It's really a multi-headed problem. It's coming at us from multiple directions. Homelessness is not a thing. It's the result of many things. And if you're going to ultimately address, what we see as homelessness, we got to get to the root of a lot of other issues. And that makes it really challenging, right? It's just, there's not a thing to do. Unfortunately, there's many, many things we need to do, and none of them are easy. And some of them, and they often have to be dealt with independently, right? It's not a singular program. So anyway, I'm not enlightening people much, but just in my quick deep dive. And again, Gretchen, I appreciate your time. I mean, Gretchen's being a great advocate for the city, and I think we got someone fantastic, heading up a really challenging issue. And Gretchen, good on you for keeping smiling through all of this, because you have a difficult set of duties. But I think you're a great person to lead the charge as the face of the city on this.
Thank you. I appreciate that. The city's really, honestly, not wanting to enable or wanting to perpetuate painful choices or poor decisions, and also is not finding, unaware of solutions that fit a number of people who are outside. The issues, as we learn from people who do street outreach and from our police and fire, and there's just a significant number of issues that go beyond what we have solutions for. And so it's really interesting. It's like we've got to address those solutions, prevent it from happening, and be able to mitigate or manage the impacts in the meantime. There's several approaches all at once, as Mark said.
With
Yeah,
that,
Gretchen, I just have to commend your attitude and your smile. You seem extremely passionate about this, and that kind of comes through. So
Thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that.
yeah, I guess I would just echo both Mark and Samantha's comments. I think that the city's in a really tough position. I am an advocate. I'm a believer in that we're a wealthy nation and a wealthy country, and we should help those who need help. But I'm also a little bit carrot or stick guy, to your point, Gretchen, that if someone is perpetuating poor choices and things of that nature, I feel a little differently about that situation than someone who has mental illness or has had some issues with. And I'm just going to get off the subject, but I think that it's commendable. Certainly, it's not something that anyone can do. I think it takes a certain personality, and I'm pleased that you're in that position and I'm not. So congratulations to you, and thank you for your efforts for sure.
Thank you, Jeff.
With that, is there anything else for Gretchen? And do we want to be sensitive to her time and let her get off to her day, Tori?
Yeah. Thank you again, Gretchen. I echo their sentiments. Appreciate your background, efforts, enthusiasm. Thank you for your work.
I appreciate it. Stay in touch with me. I want to be complimentary to your work to redevelop West Salem as a Salemite and a West Salemite. So thanks for everything you're doing. Thanks for having me today.
Good to see you.
Good day. I'll tell you what, there's some good information there, in my opinion, just to kind of know what the city's doing and things of that nature. Again, it's not an easy discussion. And to your point, Mark, there's layers to it that frankly, most of us don't understand. I know I don't. So I tend to oversimplify the situation. So that said, moving on, we're kind of at the end of the agenda. Samantha, do you want to jump in and make any announcements for the business association?
I was going to just touch on, we had our first in-person general member meeting last Thursday. Yeah, at Red Hawk Winery. That went well. Saw some members haven't seen in a long time. Our next Zoom meeting will be in regards to Salem Electric, and then talking about PSPS. Has anyone heard of that? It's a public safety power shutoff. So with the activities around the fires, they've come up with this PSPS. So they're going to be talking about basically they're going where they're servicing and shutting down power and testing this new PSPS. So that'll be in June. And then again, if you haven't signed up to golf, and Jeff, I did hear that you were some sort of a professional golfer, get a team together. It'll be a good time. And I can't remember who said it, but I'll have to get back to you on that. So yeah, just moving right along. Again, just ramping up, and we're seeing more activity. I feel like we tend to be more, let's get together and have a good time rather than focus on like the homelessness or, so that's kind of the agenda, I think, for the next 2 to 3 months. Just getting people back out. Yeah.
Thank you. I do think that people are clamoring to get back out. And by the way, I'm a terrible golfer. I love doing it, but I will take a divot and the ball will stay right where it was. So that's an indication of my golf game.
Okay.
That said, I do have it in the calendar to play. And I think Mark and John and Brandon were all going to play too, right? Weren't we all talking about that at some point? John, you were coming down for a game?
Yay!
I was gonna participate if there's a laser tag event, so I don't know about
Definitely, yeah.
I think at this event, they're going to change it a little bit this year, that you can bring paintball guns out and shoot people as you're driving around, which seems like something I've done before at a bachelor party, just talking out loud at this point.
So much fun. I would love to see everyone there. That'd be awesome.
Yeah, fun event.
Yeah.
Well, that said, is there, Mark, John, Brandon, anything for the good of the order before we kind of wrap it up?
I think I will just reiterate again, after Gretchen left. Again, I'm no expert on this, but we have talked about this issue at our board level as far as homelessness and the effects, John, on businesses. I mean, and we're not immune from that. I responded to numerous break-ins West Salem over the last year. It's a multi-headed problem, and there's just no way to put pressure on any one point and help make this better in the near term. But I'm convinced the city's focused on it. It's a known issue. People are working on it. But I have nothing to offer in the way of solutions other than just to know that, yeah, it's a real thing. It's getting worse. And I don't know, something's going to have to give, but I couldn't point to what. People are trying.
Yeah, I would just say that I tend to be an optimist, but on this issue, I'm probably more pessimistic. I don't think we have the mental fortitude to see this issue properly addressed and I don't think it's just the city's issue. I think it's a much more wider issue. And I think societally, I think it's going to be something that's going to be too hard for us to address, and it will continue to deteriorate. But I know that's not a positive thing to say, but that's the trend I've seen in the last 10 years. I mean, I don't see huge sweeping changes to make a difference. I only see a slow, slippery decline. So it's nice to hear that people are looking at it and trying to put in some circumstances to mitigate it. I'm just not confident those those mitigation techniques are going to reap the benefits we're all intending them to.
I'll just jump in real quick along those lines. And Brandon, certainly jump in if you have a comment or question. I would say that I agree with both of your statements, Mark and John. I recently was chairing an event for the chamber where we had the mayor and we had the police, and there was a lot of people on the call, 80 some members on that call, in particular, the highest we've ever had for public policy for the chamber. And I said it there and it was recorded. I'll say it again. I think that there will be people that will, to your point, John, will start making some choices that will not be kind or gracious to homeless. I think that because of the police having their hands tied a little bit, you can't arrest someone for just peeing. There are people that are going to start protecting their property, and I don't think that's going to be a good thing for humankind. I think that it's going to become a pretty bad deal from my perspective, and I don't want to see that happen, but I see that happening as we move forward. Mark, to your point, having several break-ins. There's some people over by Cascade Gateway Park that there's been fires set. There's been a lot of businesses over there. There's a 55 and over park over there that people are relatively vulnerable at times. And I think that at some point people are just going to start protecting themselves, and it's not going to be good in my mind. Ooh, that seems heavy. That seems heavy after a golf talk. So with that, Brandon, you've been awfully quiet. I want to make sure that there's opportunity for you to chime in if there's something you'd like to add. If not, no pressure. You showed your pen. That's what matters, right, Samantha?
What I'm talking about.
Tori, are there any current events in West Salem? I mean, happenings, things, new projects, just stuff in general that we may not be aware of?
Yeah, we have a new office building going up off of Patterson. So you'll see the construction fencing there. I need to get the blue City of Salem, the grant sign that typically goes up. We've had a lot of projects throughout the city, so those signs are a bit scarce. So I have to track one down and get it posted. And then I'm in discussion with other potential grants coming around. Let's see, Truett wrapped up their improvements. They were set to do another production line. That was what the grant was set up to do. And I think there's some debate now that they're owned by a new owner, if that investment should happen in West Salem, or I forget what their other location is, like in Kentucky or West Virginia or something like that. So I think I haven't seen that one pan out yet. I'm still in discussion with them. It'd be great to see the investment happen in West Salem, but I understand, it's a new owner and it's a global and national brand, so they have to do
Their
it.
Kentucky location is really well located as far as serving the population of the United States.
Yeah,
I can't remember what percentage of the population is within like an 8-hour drive of their facility. So they have choices to make in where they invest for sure.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
I had a quick question on the Holman Hotel right there in the corner. Is there any word on that, or?
Oh yeah, that's a good question. I know I was going through the historic, like all the permitting processes. I don't know what has taken so long to actual breakdown. We're talking downtown. What is that off? Is it off Trade?
Yeah, Trade. And
yeah, it's right on that corner. It'll be a neat project once it gets going. It seems like there's been some activity as far as like the fencing and like what's happened on site, but I haven't seen any new construction. I can check on that because I'm really curious about that too. That's one of those things where this discussion of homelessness and the pandemic, we had a lot of neat things happening, West Salem, downtown, and it's just these things that keep like, throwing a wrench in that movement. So hopefully we can get back to it. I'll check on that.
Is there any word on a new use for the ATI building?
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of interest in that building. There was a manufacturer that was looking to expand, and they went to a pre-application meeting, and their own physical space was prohibitive. So I think there are multiple parties looking at that building. One of them was like for CrossFit, so I'm not sure exactly where it will land. Yeah, but I think there's a lot of competing uses that could go in there. I would hope that would be because ATI was a great employer, a great manufacturer. It'd be nice to see, that technical manufacturing, because it seems like it's in that district. It's like this 9th, 7th to 9th Street area that's like this metal manufacturing, high-tech manufacturing little niche. So it'd be nice to see that continue, but I haven't heard where the owner has landed with that. I'm happy to check on that too.
Any updates on 2nd Street or how that's progressing? I think last we spoke, there was some engineering? There were some things happening there.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so we'll have more probably in the fall. So we did the survey work. Truett has been out there and they removed encroachments over the decades that, where it just sat. They had some building and things that went into that space. So we've been working closely with Salem Electric and the adjacent property owners to let them know, that we'll be constructing a road through there. And they've all been very cooperative. Salem Electric's already been in and pulled, what they had. It's really a great area because in a lot of places, like, where you have to redevelop, you have to contend with overhead wires and those things. If you look through that, there's nothing. You'll see overhead wires on cross streets, main streets, but 2nd Street wasn't one of them. So we will be running, we'll have conduit and things underground. So as development happens, it'll be underground. So we don't have to pay for that, so that's a good thing. As far as having more information, we've had the survey work. So that's kind of in that processing point right now. Once we have the groundwork laid out, we kind of have like an idea of what it'll look like. Then we'll go around to the public spaces and have a conversation about what elements to include as far as streetscaping. This will be more than it's set up to be a local street. We want it to be kind of a continuation of Edgewater. So what do those elements look like? What do we anticipate as far as businesses or, I think I'll have to check. I believe the Thursday market started again. So, what can we do in some of those cross streets to help with the Thursday market, or in the evening, where people get out and, if you want to dine and those kind of things, what can we do to have like some fixed infrastructure in place to, kind of create a space for, some kind of activity, dining, those kind of things. So those will be the conversations we have once we have the foundation laid. So as soon as we have that, probably this fall, we'll make the rounds and get your feedback. So yeah, it's moving forward. It's exciting because it is kind of a blank slate. We don't have really any things, obstacles to contend with as far as wires and now structures. So should be a good conversation.
I'm sorry, along those lines, second goes right through Truett. There's a couple buildings there.
Yeah.
And they've been cooperative. I mean, there's already easement through there, but I think that they were kind of using that. There's all fenced off, no problems.
They pulled all their stuff. It's all clean. So it's one of those where we'll still have to work through kind of an interim phase, because there's talk of they could do something different with it, or maybe someone, maybe they sell it and it gets redeveloped. So it'll be in this weird state of, we'll be in the process of constructing a new street through there. And then you'll still have kind of this older building like near it. But the encroachments that were there, those have all been removed. So if you take a trip off, you can look through there. Patterson, I don't know, you'd have to have a good memory or a photo to see what it used to look like compared to what it looks like now. But it's really opened up through there a lot more now that the encroachments are gone. I was just mentioned too on the agenda, because we typically like December, July, we take that meeting off. I just had proposed it. So I don't know if you guys want to talk about that too. For next month to have that canceled.
Yeah, I had that. I was going to bring that up. That do we want to have a July meeting or do we want to cancel that? I don't have a preference one way or another. What does everyone else think? Not that we can vote on it, because I don't want Therese browbeating me like a puppy dog about a vote. So
why don't we see if anything bubbles up that we need to address in the next week, and if not, we can potentially pull it from the calendar.
Brandon, any thoughts? John?
Yep, that sounds like a meaningful suggestion that we cannot vote on.
Okay.
Well, with that said, if there's not anything else to go to the order, we're going to be out a little early, which I always love. I know everyone else probably does as well. Unless there's any last minute things. I will say this, tomorrow, if you're a chamber member, we're hosting another public policy meeting, and it's all about the ARPA funds that the state received. And so we have some state legislators, Mayor Bennett, Mayor Clark from the city and Salem and Kaiser respectively, both Marion and Polk counties, just talking about where they're planning to put those ARPA dollars from a legislative perspective all the way down through the city. So I think it should be an interesting call if you're a member. It'd be great for you to sign on.
Quick question. Sorry, just really quick. I apologize. Tori, any update on our sign?
Yeah, so I was going to bring that to the August when I have a little bit more.
Oh,
so I'll pull that together.
Right.
So when I'll actually have as an agenda item for August.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome.
Yeah.
It might be in July, but we don't know. We haven't voted on it. So
yeah, true.
Thank you.
All right. Well, with that said, everybody have a wonderful day. Always appreciate everyone being here, and nice to see everyone. Enjoy the sun.
Yeah.
All right. See you guys. Good to see you.
Bye.